Right, I see we're all coming in. Thank you very much. Well, the first session of this afternoon is focused on creating cloud-native software engineering teams. We know that cloud-native has now become established as a way of creating, deploying, and managing software. We're seeing it in a lot of industries. We're seeing it in telecoms now. Yet there's still this uncertainty within the telco industry about why and how to adopt cloud native and the practical considerations for a telco looking to become a cloud native telco with a cloud native software engineering team. So we're going to talk about all these things in our panel session. That's coming up in about 5 or 10 minutes time. Now, there are a number of cloud native initiatives within the industry and beyond the industry, many of which I'm pleased to say have got a telco focus to them. But one of them I want to talk about now, and to give us an update on this, I'd like to invite Anita Döhler to the stage. Anita is the CEO of the NGMN Alliance. Anita, please come on up.
Thank you.
So, Anita, good to see you back at DSP Leaders. You've been supporting us for a number of years now. It's great. Now, last September, the NGMN published a cloud-native manifesto. It's a white paper that provided a telco viewpoint of cloud-native. But what was the rationale for the report? Because you've been advocating 3 pillars, and then the cloud-native manifesto comes out. Why was it needed?
Mm-hmm. Very good question. And first of all, thanks for having me here. It's always very nice, professional event with a lot of fun as well. So why did we publish the Cloud Native Manifesto? So as an operator-driven alliance, we focus on how to master the route to disaggregation. We are operating disaggregated networks, but also network automation part of it. Sustainability is another big pillar. And then the next steps after 5G, 6G, so network evolution. I think if you go back a bit to think about why the industry embarked on the route to disaggregation, it was, first of all, so several factors contributed, but one factor is that we wanted to achieve a healthy ecosystem. So we wanted to enrich the ecosystem, to facilitate innovation, and also for being able to react more agile to customer demands. I think Jago this morning summarized it extremely well, that innovation is facilitated by openness, choice, and competition. But the other part is, of course, also to, by driving a healthy ecosystem, to go away from vertical monoliths. And that, of course, demands interoperability, openness, and compatibility. And operators obviously are in different phases in that route. But what operators already realized was that actually it is not really interoperable what at the moment is deployed, so tested, delivered, tested, and deployed in the industry. And that some of the operators who already embarked on that route actually spent an awful amount of efforts and also budget to achieve running systems. And if we want to go for network automation, then it's also even more important that, for instance, we achieve a cloud nativeness. And therefore, our board of directors decided, it was actually a decision of the board of directors to publish this operator view on what actually cloud nativeness should look like. We established the 7 principles, and now we are working on the next steps, because of course it's not just about publishing a manifesto. I think there is a lot of work needed in the industry, and it also demands all partners to work together to achieve such a status.
Well, the publication, which is well worth downloading and reading if anyone hasn't done so yet, sets out a number of prioritized calls for action because, let's face it, we are still as an industry quite a long way from deploying cloud native workloads at scale and really embracing cloud native. Do you think that telcos now see the way ahead? Do they agree on these action points? Has the last 12 months brought us together in terms of what we need to do? Or do you find that as a result, perhaps of creating this manifesto, that we still lack a coherent approach?
Well, I think it depends on what we define as a coherent approach. Operators, of course, have a choice how to embark that route. And what we see is that they are not all doing the same, of course. Some already embarked on the route to cloud nativeness. Others are still not really believing in it. That's also, of course, happening because of the problems and the issues we are seeing in the industry. And I think we all know that the route to disaggregation anyway is also delayed. So now we think it will happen probably in 25. So there are different approaches. Some operators reacting on the reality of the situation. They went with different vendors for different cloud network domains, so to kind of overcome the problem a bit, because of course someone also tries to be pragmatic if you want to achieve something. But all in all, I believe, and that's also what we are discussing in NGMN amongst the operators, but of course also by involving vendors and research institutes, there is a strong consensus that we need to do something to really achieve cloud nativeness. And that's something which we are currently also exploring with regards to how can we cooperate with other organizations to not reinvent the wheel. And I think it also needs to be meaningful to the industry, because no one wants to boil the ocean. So the target and the steps to achieve that target need to be realistic.
You spoke earlier about disaggregation. You've also got the Odin project. It's an ongoing project of the NGMN, focused on disaggregated networks. Did you find that as a result of your work on the manifesto that there is a synergy between cloud native and disaggregation?
Disaggregation not necessarily needs to be based on cloud native. Therefore, we have this under the umbrella of mastering the route to disaggregation, but in reality, they are not necessarily directly interlinked. So when it comes to how to operate disaggregated networks, it's also about how to achieve a complete change of the processes, the organization. What does it mean to embark the different models, either by using system integrators, or some operators went to the route that the vendor plays an important role in integrating the systems. Other operators decided to do this in-house, and that's something we are also working on in the future. It will also continue in the next months to analyze what actually are the advantages, disadvantages, and what is needed to enable the different models. And of course, it's also about best practice sharing. So alliances like NGMN are also a good place to exchange in a pre-competitive environment best practices.
Great. Well, Anita, we look forward to seeing the next steps, hopefully very soon. You're staying here because you're going to join us on the panel. But for now, everyone, thank you very much to Anita. Thank you. So, time for another short video whilst we rearrange the furniture on the stage and call up our panelists for this next session. And surprisingly, the video is highlights from our Cloud Native Telco Summit. So let's roll the video and rearrange the stage.
In the beginning, we said, let's move everything into the cloud so we become cloud native. And I think that's where many people make the mistake. You by default don't become cloud native just because you move it into the cloud.
Going cloud and cloud native requires the right skill sets. So you really need to make up your mind, how do you get access to these skills? What can you do in upskilling with your own guys? What do you need to get from the market? And then put them into a flexible organization.
We should have releases, daily, larger release packages, every couple weeks, and new product deployment within 6 to 9 months. And we're moving down that path, and the business is seeing significant improvement in our ability to deliver faster, reduce costs driven through reuse of things, so that we don't have we are reducing the complexity and simplifying our environment.
This journey to the cloud native is not easy and requires collaboration, support from different stakeholders. There's many partners involved. On the one hand, the cloud stack providers, because we need them to incorporate the capabilities required by the telco operators for the telco services.
I think that it's very, very important to highlight the scope of what we want to cover. I think that a lot of telecom operators today are already ready in terms of cloud native infrastructure. But it's not because you have an infrastructure that you are able to run network cloud native network function. So it means that it's a total ecosystem maturity that we need to level up.
There's a lot of applications today that have been moved to cloud. It doesn't necessarily mean they are cloud native yet. And that is another reality that we're dealing with and helping mitigate with our customers.
Great insight there from our Cloud Native Telco Summit, our very first online summit, and it's still our most popular one. So stay tuned for that later this year. Don't forget, that's going to be, when's that? Mid-September, I think, so mark your calendars for that. Right, time for our next viewer poll. I want to remind you what the question for this one is, and as again, we've got 3 answer choices, and we are only allowing you to vote for one of them. And the question we are asking is, what is the role of cloud native in successfully provisioning digital services? Essential, optional, or not necessary? Go ahead and vote on the TelecomTV website. You'll find all the polls in the DSP Leaders section on the agenda page. And we will take a look at the state of the voting at the end of this session. So let's now introduce our co-host for this session. I'm delighted to say that Franz Seiser is joining us. Franz is VP Tribe Lead T-DAT at Deutsche Telekom Technik. Franz, good to see you again.
Pleasure.
Excuse me, I'm very pleased you're here talking about Cloud Native with us. We're going to ask you to give the address in a moment, but first let's introduce our other panelists. I'd like to get them to introduce themselves briefly, starting on my far left with Neil.
Hi, I'm Neil McCrae. I work for Juniper Networks.
I'm Alfredo Musitani from Telecom Argentina with sales of digital services.
Thanks, Alfredo. And Anita, we've met already, and Mirko.
Hi everyone, Mirko Voltolini, work for Colt Technology, I run architecture innovation.
Good afternoon everyone, my name is Laura Murphy. I work as a Senior Transformation Lead at BT.
Great, thanks everyone. Well, Franz, would you like to take to the podium and deliver the DSP Leaders Address? Thank you.
Good afternoon. Pleasure to be here, right from the screen down to reality. That's actually a very nicely timed event, because people who may know me in here know that last couple of years I was talking a lot about ORAN. I'm not talking that much about ORAN anymore, because I changed in DT recently to eat my own dog food now. What does it mean? I'm pretty. I think I have a long history in the journey of first virtualization and then cloudification, and always trying to advocate that this is the route to go, but always on architecture and strategy level. But now I got an opportunity, which I took, to operationally be responsible. So I'm now responsible in Germany for engineering, building, and running all our platforms to produce customer data traffic. It means mobile core, fixed control net platforms, and stuff like that. And luckily, I have one team in there already, which is cloud native, because we are deploying 5G core for standalone. And that was my teams, when I was still doing that part, were very active in defining the standards. Now we're implementing, we have an MVP running already, and we are currently working to get it scaled for a large-scale consumer launch, most likely later this year. I also have teams which are still working a bit more in classical mode, so I nicely can see the differences and where you can go, and where you are still stuck with mainly virtualized technology, which very often is still too close from my feeling to what we had in the past with appliances. So strategy going cloud native in DT, totally clear. We talk a lot about telco as a platform, and the platform, of course, is cloudified production of network functions. Also, as I said already nicely, so thanks for putting that video, skills, of course, is important. So you still need to have all your networking skills, of course, but you need to amend that now with software skills to put things like a 5G core into your networks and make it to run it and to produce it. What you also need, and I couldn't resist, you need to have a proper architecture. And if things go right, I managed to convince them that I'm allowed to show one single slide, which is the most complicated architecture picture you probably have ever seen. And it's not done for here. We really use that picture internally in DT to explain cloudification. So this is really something we're using, and how you need to read that. It's a burger, obviously, as you see, we didn't have burger for lunch, and would have been even more fun, but it's still, I hope we all had lunch and you don't get hungry looking at it. So burger, of course, I'm doing the network function, so I'm the meat, the most important, the most tasty piece. You can decide now if it's vegan or real meat, but we are the juicy part of the thing. But you also have bread and things in between. The bread, the lower one, is the cloud layer. The upper bread is all the tools for automation, management, and orchestration. And they are platforms. So one more important thing architecture-wise, we have one cloud platform to produce all the network functions. We don't have vendor-specific silos, which we had to some extent in the virtualized environment, but for cloud, one cloud layer, all the network functions, one set of tooling for automation to use for all the things. And that's why the salad and the tomatoes are so important, because they are always the adaptation for the specific network functions to the cloud and building the automation solution. So in one burger you have more tomatoes, and the other you have more onions, may or may not have cheese, depending on what the meat in between requires. But this is the architecture we are following. So that's very clear. That comes, and that's super important, of course, with a fundamental change in operating model. Because you're not operating silos anymore, suddenly you're operating platforms. And to make that happen, that leads to from my practical experience, most important thing you need to work on. It's not skills, it's not technology, it's mindset. Mindset of the people. Because up to now, the guys were used to run their silo, they're responsible end-to-end for everything. They don't need to talk to anyone besides the supplier, which they need to beat all the time, obviously. But other than that, they were end-to-end. Suddenly, they're depending on other people. They need to talk to other people. They need to ask other people for help. This is a barrier you need to work on. This is the issue. You really need to work in the teams that they understand they only can be successful together. And that's the real essence in going cloud, and really bringing people to work together, work as a team, split responsibilities, that in the end you can bring the right operating model in place, so you can run this whole thing and troubleshoot if required in the right way to still be able to produce the services in a stable manner. Why? And I left that because this I hope will be also the key discussion we have here. Why do we do that? We don't do that to say, hurrah, we are cloudified. Cloud is not a means in itself. Cloud is a tool to get more flexible, to become faster, to enable automation. It forces you to do automation because it's so much more complex. You don't start to fool around manually, to really drive us down that route, to become more efficient on the one side, which we had, but also to enable much faster innovation cycles, because suddenly we're not talking 3 big updates a year, we're talking a software update every second week. So you can adapt much faster in much smaller steps to adapt to requirements as they're coming from the market. Try it out. If it doesn't work, you roll it back, to really come to this completely different level of flexibility, and I call it software speed, even in producing network services for customers. Thank you.
Thank you. Franz, thank you. Mindset. I think we'll get some interesting reactions from our guests here. Skills, people, and mindsets, not just the technology. Would any of our panelists like to quiz Franz on anything we've just heard now? It's an opportunity to shoot a question at Franz if you'd like to do so. Otherwise, we will go straight on to our first question. I've got a question for you. Good. Where did you get that burger from? Because the places I've been to for burgers, they never look like that.
I must admit this was, I said I just changed that role a couple of months ago. The burger existed before I came into there, so I need to credit the guys. When I saw it first time, I really was laughing, saying, are you serious? This is arcade? But it works. It's much better to explain to people not deeply in technology what it's all about versus you come with these typical pictures with 10,000 of boxes and what is that?
Right. Well, talking about explanation, it pains me to say this, but it feels like we have to once again define what cloud native is, because a number of times we've been here and we think we know what we're talking about, and then we'll have a conversation going, and then it transpires that some people don't get it. It's the part of cloud native, it's the first word, it's cloud, which seems to confuse a lot of people. Do we still need to get this sorted out, or are you, let's say our panelists here, are you confident that we now understand cloud native, or is this still some kind of concept that is still lost on a lot of people in our industry? Franz, do you want to start off first, and then we'll go to our guests?
I have a certain understanding, obviously. I hope I'm not the only one with that, but it's like many times, right? These terms are then misused by everyone. Say, oh, everyone wants me to be cloud native, so I somehow tweak it that what I have is also called cloud native, even though it's not. Even I have to admit, sometimes I struggle because not everything. If you look at this narrow definition of cloud native, some of the network functions never ever can be cloud native. As long as you have state, you need to keep states. Let's stop this technical stuff, but it's super difficult to make them cloud native. Most of the things can be done, but we are mixing it together. It's okay. But I hope we have kind of a common understanding.
Any other thoughts? Yes, Matt.
Yeah, I would add, I think you can look at this. I would say that generally speaking, the industry now understands this much better than it was in the past. I look at it from three areas. The technology, and we spoke about it, but I think the paper actually has been published, does quite a good job in describing that. There's the people, skills and mindset, and Franz talked about that. That's quite important, but also is the commercial angle. The commercial angle is how do you change the picture with cloud-native applications, bringing them to market much faster, and also enabling network as a service, or the ability to bring together different applications and glue them together with APIs and technology that I support. I look at these three angles. Plus, I think we also need to look at cloud native applied to the actual functions, so the core functions, as well as cloud native applied to the control layer of the network. And I think that's also much easier to address as we have more control on that side.
Thanks, Mirko. Neil.
Yeah, I really like the burger analogy, because some people want more onions, some people might want a plant-based burger, although I don't know why. But so for me, cloud native actually started with how do we build the telephone switch for the modern era? And if you think about the telephone switch, which made all of us exist today, a dreadful technology that it was, you've effectively got a platform for delivering services, and you could deliver lots of different services. And telcos were super profitable at that point in time. So how do we move to the world of delivering those services and innovating, as Frank said, on a regular way that allows us to deliver services in a consistent manner that allows us to manage it without having to do heavy lifting. But for me, the actual real goal for the cloud native was to build an efficient platform. So very early on in NFV, we could see that it was never going to be efficient enough. You either had too much disk, or not enough I/O, or too much memory, or not enough CPU. And actually, in my previous place, I resisted it because all I could see was money being wasted from the point of view of, can I really generate cash out of this and have a platform that's truly multi-service? So, I think the innovation part and being able to deliver stuff fast into the customer's hands in the way that we used to do with a telephone switch, and I spent most of my life ripping them out, so I'm not a fan of that technology, but it delivered a great set of services for many users for like 100 years. So that's what I look at from cloud native. And actually, we're in the kind of almost, I think, the fourth generation of cloud native. Mythos back in the early days, if you think about Twitter, who remembers when you used to get the whale in Twitter? The way they solved that was Mythos and kind of moving into a cloud native platform where you can scale up, scale down, scale in, scale out. So And in our world, in telco, I see, in the customers we serve, that's really what we need. You think of New Year, when you're sending that Happy New Year message, how many people actually get it? Well, with today's cloud native technology, everybody gets it. And that's the beauty of it.
Thanks, Neil. Laura, can I bring you in? Because
yes.
we focus a lot on technology, but we've known from the outset, cloud native also refers to a mentality, methodology, 100%. A mindset. It's a people. Franz has mentioned it here, mindset. With the work you do and your focus within telcos, what's your thoughts of the cloud native message getting through to teams?
I think this is where it gets tricky, because cloud as a technology is not a static platform, right? It's an ever-evolving set of capabilities and so on and so forth. So that's a shifting target. And then you're putting cloud into organizations that themselves shift. And I wonder if this is where the ambiguity around cloud native or cloud hosting comes from, right? That continually changing environment in which you're trying to enact it. I love the part of the video which the gentleman was saying, actually, just because I put stuff onto cloud does not mean it's cloud native. And that's something that I work through with teams a lot. And I always use the furniture analogy as opposed to a food one. For me, cloud hosting is where I put my pre-loved pieces of furniture in a new house, right? And I can twist that, and I can give them extra storage, I can give them more processing, I can, decrease my reliance on physical infrastructure, I can, access that remotely in some way, so on and so forth. But there's the same quirky pieces of furniture that they always were, and they're deeply intertwined with the environment in which they were created, and they retain that dependency. Whereas for cloud native, I've moved into a new house on a new street with a new set of neighbors. I have big windows. Those neighbors are waving through the window. It's a lot more open, flexible, scalable. I can add bits to my house. I can take them off, et cetera, et cetera. So that mindset shift of teams to really embrace the full spectrum of that technology and to see themselves as actually generating value for the customer and generating value in their particular part of the value chain is absolutely huge and absolutely significant if you're really going to generate the full value of the technology.
Thanks, Laura. Any other comments about the defining cloud native, understanding of cloud native? Alfredo?
I really agree in these situations that you said, that the cloud nativeness is not about the technology mainly, and many of them tell, is about the mindset, it's about the organizational mindset that I think we are, as organizations, are a kind of a different animal besides ourselves. And this is much slower to change. And I love what she tells about the manifesto. The manifesto, it came from the agile manifesto, maybe it came from the social manifesto, but besides politics, I get that there is a lot to be done into agility that I think it came from lean, mainly before it was the lean, and the Toyota is still working with lean manufacturing. And I don't see this lean portion in the telco industry. I see a lot of energy into going to the cloud and making it cloud native in the functions, but not cloud native into the transformation, inside transformation. And the inside transformation is agility, and is taking every portion that does not go into value to the client out. So if I have to make any report that is not giving value to my customer, I threw this report and this OKR, I threw it every OKR away and just leave the one that gives value to the customer. And I think this portion is not easily understood.
Thanks, everyone. Anita?
Yeah, just quickly for me, of course it's easy because I just refer to the Cloud Native Manifesto, and unfortunately I cannot take the credit because it was written by our operator members. But I think now the next important part is one is the definition, but how to really agree on assessments. So how do we assess cloud nativeness, and how much of those validation processes and test processes is really needed in the industry. I think that's where we are currently also having quite some discussions with regards to the meaningfulness of processes. And then with regards to the mindset, I think it's also about building trust into own skills. So first of all, I assume that many of the employees, Franz, you know it better than I, but in British Telecom or Deutsche Telekom are probably not necessarily the cloud native gurus. So how do you, even if you are upskilled as an operational specialist, how do you build trust into the technology? How do you build trust in your own skills? And how do you manage SLAs and accountability? Yeah.
Good point. Let's put Franz on the spot right now. You do represent a large telco, and we know from our conversations over the years that telcos are on this. There's a big range of cloud nativeness. Some are at the very beginning, some are just thinking about it, some aren't even thinking about it, some are pioneers. So to answer sort of Anita's question there, when you've got this large workforce, how do you go about this?
I said this workforce, of course, is not uniform. So and luckily there is already one team doing the 5G core, which is really, they are true DevOps. I have other areas. We still run a virtualized EPC. This is classical waterfall, split between operations engineering, as we have done it for decades. But there we do true DevOps. So fundamentally different setup, fundamentally different mindset in getting things done. They really think cloud. These guys, of course, they are guys knowing 3GPP, but the majority of the team is not going to 3GPP. They are going to KubeCon.
Sure.
Yeah. So difference. Very different way of thinking. Still, the struggle with the cloud people because they're even more strict. We always have this, what can we do from a cloud native application side versus what cloud people expect, and they tell, well, why shall I tell you that I changed the Kubernetes version? You're cloud native, you should be able to do it. Yeah, you are not, because you still have limits and certain versions of software only certified for certain versions of Kubernetes, and if you change that, then suddenly it doesn't work. So there are some of these learnings you need to go through. But it's about mixture. Of course, it's not one single person, but you need to bring the right people together. The good thing is, typically, you always can get engineers with new technical challenges. So once you get them there and say, hey, you're working on the latest thing out there and on the hottest shit, sorry for that wording, that's typically a huge amount of people, I would even say, they get intrigued by it and they are keen to explore. Of course, there are some, I have done that, leave me alone, that you need to figure out, but most of the people really start to become interested. And if you put the right mix together and look a little bit on the chemistry between the people, this is starting to fly, because engineers typically, they are really keen. What they need to learn is to communicate. To communicate with the surroundings, to not see the other team as supporting them, and you throw something over the fence, and you then wonder if 1 week later nothing is coming back, but you never asked if they understood what to do, if they can commit that they didn't know. I told them they should, these kind of things that you need to build, and that's the journey you need to go through. But you can make it happen.
So this leads on to another point that I'd love us to cover. You've got a dedicated team in the 5G SA core work there. There seems to be a strong case for focusing on the basics. Get the basics right first. Build that cloud native team correctly. Get it working. And then from that foundation, you're then able to go off into whatever it might be, service creations in different areas and technologies. But you've got to get your foundations right first. Now, that seems great on paper, but I'd imagine reality is a little bit tricky for a lot of telcos, and you haven't got the luxury to sort of step back and think about this. It just all happens at the speed of light. Any
so this is one of our biggest challenges. We mentioned a lot about the people. How do we measure the people and their suitability for this? Because at least I've worked in just about every telco here in the UK. None of us were great at measuring how good our people were. Oh, Fred's a great guy and Sheila's brilliant, but actually what's the real measure? And how are they as engineers developing the skill sets and the kind of human-sided capabilities to be able to flourish in this scenario? And what I've learned in this period is actually, in people's careers, they kind of learn a bunch of stuff and then they kind of stop learning. And then for me, cloud native, actually, if there's a way I would describe it, it's centered around lifelong learning. And if you aren't in that space, you're not gonna make it in this world. And it's not just it's about how you communicate, but it's also about how you adapt and change. So, there's a lot of papers out there that kind of are prescriptive about processes and pipelines. For me, that's kind of, that's not cloud native. That feels like the old way. But how do you have a team that suddenly says, actually, what we're building here, it's cloud native, but actually it's got such a high mission priority, we're going to put extra unit testing in, we're going to shift to the left, right? And without that sort of thinking, you'll just end up with your mess on a really horrible platform that's hard to manage. But I think the other thing to add to this is this world is about declaring an outcome and being very declarative in what you're trying to achieve. And actually, for me, the genesis of writing stuff well is getting that declaration right so that your engineering team build what you need and what you want and hopefully what the customer wants to buy. And actually, in a couple of projects we've run at Juniper, so we have a Juniper Cloud Native router. You can log on to any of the clouds and press a button and you've got a Junos router. It's completely cloud native. And we built that with our customers involved in the process. And because of that, we've got a way that it works that suits their needs, both from a legacy point of view, but also in adapting customers to move to adapting their teams and their platforms to move to the future.
Thanks, Neil. So this is really, and Laura, this is like, coming back to what we said at the very start of the day, let's not lose track of the customer. And it is requiring a focus on the customer value that is driving all this.
100%. I think there are so many C's going around in my head at the moment. One is definitely customer value and that focus, and I completely agree with the declaration of intent in order to drive the value so that, again, you're using the principles and the ways of working effectively and you're not, delivering stuff that doesn't have value because it's an awfully expensive tool, right? I think the way, and again, I'd build on the points around skills and aptitude and desire. I often think of it in terms of moving from a pyramid organizational or team structure to a hive. In terms of, the classic pyramid, information goes up, decision comes down, right? Quite kind of, multi-layers of hierarchy, big releases, go, no-go decisions, et cetera, right? Lots of kind of layers of decision-making on there. And the way I'd encourage teams to think about themselves as they approach cloud is to think of themselves in that kind of more hexagonal framework, right? In that you can see hexagons come off as you spin off microservices, they come on as you develop new offerings for the customer, that incredible focus on customer value there. But also, as a team or as a person, you can imagine yourself in that structure. And actually, where it's worked with teams for me is that it encourages that collaboration and that I actually will go and drive my continual learning in that process. I will go and drive the value. I will go and talk to that other team over there who previously I had nothing to do with, because suddenly I see the link between my work and their work in a much more value stream-led way of working, right? Which ultimately, even though I'm working on this part, leads to this overall framework. I think there's also a wider transformational point beyond that, around leadership, you mentioned teams working on MVPs, right? So there's a pilot approach here, which I think builds teams' confidence in terms of delivering cloud-native applications. Let's create safe space for them to learn and grow and develop, but that also leadership needs to enable that safe space and that interplay between the teams. That needs to be a kind of new value-driven output that we're going to go after, right? And perhaps that's what you measure in terms of the, richness of the collaboration. Do we deliver value? Yes or no? Is the work that we're doing quality, or is it, full of defects, et cetera, and actually, how is the flow of the work working? Is it still as kind of up and down through the different decision-making forums as it used to be, or is that actually the teams are humming together really nicely?
Thanks, Laura. Mirko, let's come
on a practical level, I'm just thinking about how we have approached this and how maybe we could learn from the past. If you look at the industry, we're at the beginning of a massive transition towards this model, assuming that this model is going to bring all the efficiencies we need and will help us take different services to market faster. everybody starts from zero, cloud native and traditional development and operations. If you want to move to the nirvana of full 100% DevOps, I think it's inevitable to start with a specific element of the stack. I like the analogy of the burger, I might steal it, but in the end, what we all do is that we build we need a burger alongside the existing sandwiches and panini that we have. And so it's an area that it's hard to expand from the initial deployment. But it's inevitable because I think you want to bring the proof to the company about the fact that this type of way of working will bring efficiency, will bring benefits from the service standpoint. So I think it's inevitable to start from there. The challenge is how you scale it, how you expand the burger to the right side and take away all the rest. And I think that requires a different approach. You cannot build another stack alongside the existing one, but need to try and move alongside. And I think here is where programs and all we're discussing just now about empowering people and expanding the skills helps move this from this additional stack to a more general one.
I agree with that. I just build on it and the point about leadership. So in our team now, so if we hire them for a manager position or a director or anything, you get given a project that you have to build yourself and collaborate with the team. And if you do it, you're in. If you don't, adios. It's nice to know you, but you're probably not right for us. And that is lacking in telco. It doesn't exist today. We have that nowhere in the industry. I've been all over the world in the last year, seen many telcos. We do not have that way of thinking. All of the hyperscalers, that's how they behave. And we need to think about that so that it's not just about doing as I say, it's about the leader being able to walk the talk and actually be a leader that they can look up to and be inspired from, and that they're working and behaving in the way that the team needs to behave. Let me tell you, if we don't get that right, this cloud native thing will just be a thing we talk about forever. And it's so important. It's kind of weird now, having worked in telco for almost 30 years and now working for a Silicon Valley company for the last year, the things that we talk about here are just the norm. And it's such it was like wow, this is insanely different. We have got to absolutely fix that. And we need leaders across the board that know how to build this stuff. I made the point last year about, if you were to have a hackathon between telco leadership and hyperscaler leadership, who's going to win it, right? That's one of the measures and tests that we need to have. And I think, engineers, they're here to build and solve problems. They love to do it. You give them a floor space to do it and a runway to do it, bang, they'll solve any problem you've got. So, that is the crucial thing, but having someone that they are working for, that they believe in, at least in my experience, has been super, super important.
Thanks, Neil. Franz, does that resonate with you?
I fully support that. The people need to see that leadership is able to listen and understand their problem and help them solving the issues they got stuck with. If they feel they talk to someone who, I don't know, did whatever else the day before and has no clue at all what's going on, it's super difficult because they see they can anyhow do what they like, because until you recognize they are fooling you, it's anyhow. We are moving so fast, so you cannot afford, it takes you 2-3 months to figure out that they fooled you completely, and what's happening here is far away from what you expected to happen. So you need to be able to meet your people on a certain eye level to really be able to have a meaningful conversation. Maybe not everything directly, but you need to make sure also your structures in between, that these guys know what they're talking about and not only sitting on the chairs and keeping them warm.
We've heard a lot of great ideas, some new insights. I think this is a good opportunity to ask our in-room audience if there's any questions for any of our guests. I've got to just shield my eyes because the lights are really bright. Robert, right in the front box seat. Can we get a microphone across? Thank you.
Hi there, Robert Kern from Apple Research. Great conversation, great sessions already today. Alfredo, I think you brought up just in passing the lean telco idea. I think we've all been in the industry long enough to have seen that come. I'm struck by how common many of the ideas, particularly around organization and leadership that you're having today, are exactly the same. as we're experienced by the lean telco. I know we have Nick Willits in the room as well. He knows very, very well all about the kind of lean telco idea. Why did we not, as an industry, fully take on board all of the principles of lean manufacturing? I know we're a different industry, but the principles are very common. Multidimensional teams, different style of leadership, much more collaborative. Why did we not do that then? And why are we now looking to cloud native to provide the forcing function to make that happen?
Bravery.
I really think that is about our history. We used to be the only one provider, and then after then, we've been over-regulated, and we've been the victim of the society because we were delivering the safe network, and we did good. And I think this make into learning a lot how to justify where we are. So we are very great at justifying what we are and justifying the investment in next year generation. This is what we did. But I think we are in the point that we can change that. May I bring one very different approach? Yesterday I was by chance, I went to the Argentinian embassy in London. I was invited by a friend. And there was a conference on a very much different thing. It was an organization that's called Espartanos. And why I bring this to us. This organization is an organization that works with the prisoners at the maximum security, the telco providers now, because we are the bad guys, the worst guys. We don't do the thing. We have little revenue. We cannot find the investment. We are over-regulated. So we are the bad guys. No young guy can to us. So now I try to bring this because I think we can do by ourselves change how we envision ourselves. What they do is they try to change the mindset of the people and change into being a victim, as we all feel here. I think we're a victim of what we've been doing for 30 years, and change it into we are full of engineers of everything, and full of people that have a growth mindset, like Carol Dwell say. Into this growth mindset and fixed mindset, and think we're in the point of change. And this, what is the point of change in that? It's changing ourselves, how we envision ourselves, and doing making value for the customer each time, not making a better service that is very solid. Making that makes any sense to the customer, to the final customer. In what we are delivering, so go ahead.
So I think you need to step back. We've changed the world. This industry has changed the world in massive ways that, only 20 years ago you wouldn't have thought. Can you imagine COVID in 2001, what it would have been like? So I think we do kind of, I don't feel that bad. Have we got challenges? For sure, but industry goes through challenges. Look at the car industry in the 80s and 90s. Right? Where is it now, right? I don't think we're quite at that point there, but I mean, to come back to your question, Robert, it is about leadership to some extent, and what are we measuring, and where are we measuring it? So I remember our lean project on data centers that I was part of. And I was new to the organization. I was looking at this thinking, these guys are nuts, because they're going to apply lean in the very thing that is the genesis of every single project in the company. And it went badly wrong because no one knew actually where they were in terms of actually, how is this performing? Is it good? Is it bad? It was more like, hey, we're doing lean, let's roll it out. And that's just a nonsense, basically. You can't run an organization like that. So what happened is the data center organization, unsurprisingly, everyone left, went to work for Equinix and the hyperscalers, and everything stopped. And it's like, why is this project all of a sudden red? Here, right? And that is for me, that is the genesis of cloud native, which is how do we ensure that whole kind of process of the organization is joined up, and the thing that you need, the objective that you're trying to get to, is well understood. The organization's built into it. It's an OKR that really is adding value. I think that's the bit that went wrong on this, and I think there's a real danger, which is, I suspect, the reason for the question, that we might repeat that mistake. It's down to us in this room to not allow that to happen, because we were lucky. We had 4G that kind of arrived and bailed us out of not a great time from 3G. 6G looks pretty challenging to me right now.
Yeah. I fully agree on lean. I fully agree on lean, even though the story you're telling. But I think you have to go to the value proposition of everything, not mimicking what we do with. I will be doing agile, so I do every mimic of agile, but not the end of the agile. It is delivering value to the client and failing and starting something else. No, I did the big room planning. Everybody get there and stay for 3 hours altogether. I don't know.
Okay, thanks very much. Hopefully, Robert, you've got a couple of pages of notes there. That's great.
No, really.
I think you might have got time for another question. I'm struggling to see a hand. There's a hand in the air somewhere in the air there, wasn't there? Over there. At the back, yes. Sorry. The lights here are really strong. Can you pass a microphone over, please?
Hi there. We said that the last session tomorrow will be about the customer, but perhaps we could actually talk about it a little bit today. So as we think about cloud native, how can it actually directly improve the customer experience for whom we all exist and service reliability?
Right. Franz, Mirko, please.
Yeah, actually, I want to answer this one, as I was kind of like a hint in the beginning. So the commercial side of cloud native, I think, has got two angles. One is the speed of development can help us bring things to market much faster. So that's one of the angle that we can definitely leverage. The other one is the ability of cloud native applications to sit in the same environment. With that, you can create much more power propositions. I'm thinking about network as a service, bringing together connectivity, cloud security, and maybe also value-added applications on top of it. So it obviously is possible to do it even without a cloud-native application, or it's much easier to do it with application residing in this kind of environment where you can use APIs between applications, create much more power capability. I think these are two angles, speed and capabilities.
Can I add one thing? The business scalability. I recently have the chance to meet one guy from Google, and they grow with the scalability in their mindset. So I do not make any project that is not globally scalable.
Yeah.
We do all the time in our company, this is one project. And I tell them, can you do in 2 months 10 of these projects with the same kind of people? And then in 2 other months, 100 projects like this? And then in 2 other months, 1,000? This is scalability. And I know that cloud native is a basics, but it's not just the cloud native, it's just the cloud native way of thinking.
I think it's I completely agree. I think the other part is the kind of continuous nature of cloud native. So at Microsoft have done an amazing job at this. If there's one thing they've done right, it's this. So you think of Teams, the first day you logged onto it in COVID, and Teams the last day that you logged onto it is COVID, and how different and more user-friendly that was. That's because in their process, they were constantly taking feedback. And then, okay, we can just add this thing, we can do this. That is where I think we as telcos can make a massive difference. So hey, and I'll give an example, right? And I saw this in Korea recently, where the age population were being attacked with scams. And all of a sudden, the next day, in the email system and on the platform, they're able to offer a security service for free. Just press a button, we're going to turn this on, and we're going to filter out all these scams. There's so much data that we've got in the network for things like that we don't use it at all because it's too difficult. And for me, cloud native is unlocking that instant kind of customer need with data that we've got and providing something, kind of on demand. And it's that service delivery platform for me that makes me excited about this as a solution for telcos to sell more things to customers, which, if we're going to track more than £1 a share, that's what we really need to do.
Great, thanks everyone. Any more comments to answer the question about the customer-facing question? Otherwise, we'll move on. Thanks for the question, it was great. Just a reminder to our online audience, please keep sending questions in as well. We touched on this earlier, but the spectrum of where telcos are on their cloud-native journeys, because there's some telcos have excellent cloud-native integrations and fantastic teams, experienced teams doing lots of great things. But there's many other telcos who either haven't started or still trying to create, still trying to establish these teams, haven't quite got that cloud-native philosophy sorted out. So if it is to become important to successful service provision to the benefit of the customer, that's what we're here for these 2 days, what more can we do as an industry to help ensure telcos successfully make this evolution? Franz, have you got anything from your experience that we can do collectively?
Yeah, what you always can and should do is lower the barrier of entries. Because of course, if you're first faced with cloud native, you are standing in front of a wall of complexity. Fact. So what do you need to do is create best practices, standardize where you can. I mean, it's relatively straightforward on the cloud layer because almost everything today is plain vanilla Kubernetes, so that's fine. But there's of course also the top layer where we are classical OSS and now going in that area where it's much more difficult because there are no such stringent standards we have. So sharing best practices and helping these guys to come over. You always can go, of course, and seek for some help. But in the end, you need to understand, I think, that you need to invest to a certain extent in your people and your workforce to move. And as always, if you do something fundamentally different, and cloud native is fundamentally different to what you are doing today, there is a certain peak where you are running certain things in parallel for a certain amount of time. This cannot be avoided. So there is a certain, that's the case you need to make for yourself. How much are you willing and able to invest in order to come over this barrier? Because afterwards, if things work like we envision and we're working against, then you come to that level that you can become much more efficient. It's all about sharing and helping to move.
Any other thoughts about how we can overcome a lot of these apparent obstacles and challenges to make us all more cloud native? Anita.
Well, I think, as Franz said, the more positive examples we have in the market, the easier will it be also for operators who maybe don't have this large number of employees and skills to embark on the same journey. I think there is no way out of technology development, so it will come anyway sooner or later. And again, back to the topic of how to ensure a real openness and compatibility and interoperability. I think that's also something where the industry altogether need to develop trust that this is possible to achieve, because it's also about total cost of ownership. Yeah? So that's another angle. So one thing is, of course, that we want to grow the top line, so we want to faster and better react to customer demand. We want to, at the same time, to improve the operational efficiency. At the end of the day, total cost of ownership also needs to be predictable.
Thank you, Anita.
I think let engineers be engineers. So how do you create a playfield for them to learn and break things without breaking the main network? I mean, are you giving them space in compute? Are you giving them space and time to think about these things? Are they getting together to do hackathons? And anything that gets to the point of doing rather than reading. is just a must-do, basically. It's great to read about it, but hey, I've done this, and by the way, I'm now writing it on my CV.
But isn't that a barrier, this fail-fast approach? Because it's like, for telcos, it's a big no-no, no chance.
I prefer success first than fail fast, but
yeah,
I mean, it's kind of,
telco guy.
You can have that. It's kind of like, give them the tools so that they don't have to fail fast, that they've actually, we know this is going to work, or we know that's going to work, and then occasionally, I like to do this, which is, actually, we're going to change the team a little bit. I'm one of these weird people that loves watching people and how they behave. It's like, wow. But genuinely, I've just seen so many people that with the right support go from, this person that was on a PIP to this person that's now winning awards. And that's by just giving them a space to perform and letting them fail. Let them come back and say, hey, this was a nightmare, how can I fix it? And being that supportive leader when they need it, but challenging them, when you want to get something out there, basically. And I speak from my own personal experience. I was very lucky. We set up the first internet company. When we broke it, no one noticed. Today, you break the internet, and your boss is on BBC News. Hey, Howard, sorry about that. But it's kind of, we forget how, for many of us, we were able to learn through this industry. Now, it's much harder to do that real live learning. But actually, cloud native is beautiful because you can build something, change it, but not actually deploy it. And I wanted to plug something. There's a thing called KubeNet that I'd encourage everyone to have a look at. We're effectively taking some of the genesis of Kubernetes and applying it to networks. It's not a Juniper thing, it's a kind of industry thing that's come out of KubeCon and a bunch of other stuff. But it's using that sort of kind of model to actually design and build networks, a lot of which are now cloud-based anyway. And also, in that kind of programmable thinking, the biggest user of AI right now is programming by a mile. So that's another way of generating the skills by, hey, learn cloud native, but the same way you're going to learn AI at the same time.
If I can just build on that, I definitely support the idea of pilots in safe spaces, right? Get your hands dirty, muck in, start to play with the technology, learn that, build your own skill set, build your own confidence, and so on and so forth, and how you interact with other teams. I think you've pointed to the importance of leadership in creating that space. I'd also point to the importance of leadership in modeling curiosity and going out there and interacting with others in the industry to develop solutions for your own particular organizational context. I think half the tricky thing is that actually, whilst the technology is relatively standard, it's coming into an organization that has its own cultural suppositions around risk, scalability, interactions, collaboration, continual learning, innovation, et cetera, et cetera. And I think the more you can demonstrate that you as an organization believe those values, you're enacting them, the happier your path to cloud will be, because actually you're demonstrating that mindset, you're demonstrating that this technology, you consider it to be valuable, and you consider it to unlock customer value, and actually I'm modeling these behaviors, which we need to do to go out and build the most of it.
Thanks, Laura. Franz,
but the thing is, so I agree with that, but actually, here's what's true. If we keep going the way we're going, our industry's in super trouble. So, the message I would say, if anyone who's got that kind of, it's hard, well, are we going to keep doing what we're doing, or are we going to do something different? Because keep doing what we're doing, what was it, TSR minus 10? It'll be minus 20. We'll be like the industry that really got it wrong. And business schools will talk about us forever. So I think there's never a better time to drive change, because what we've done for the last 10 years hasn't worked.
But surely having a really good cloud-native ethos is probably the only way or the best way telcos are going to attract new talent or redirect existing talent. Surely that's the place everyone wants to work if you're a software engineer, is in a good cloud-native environment. What are you finding for recruiting?
Guess where I have the lowest average age in my teams? Exactly there. Because these are the guys where they are able to attract the people. They see they can work on something meaningful. It has a direct impact. You're not one of, I don't know how many in Europe in a hyperscaler. You are working really state-of-the-art topic and something that goes to live operation relatively soon. So And this is something this is really attracting people, because they say the impact they can make working at an operator on cloud native is fundamentally different versus they working at a hyperscaler, because they are so much closer to the real product. And that's something that really resonates with people. Yeah? They see that. And that's what, and this suddenly starts happening, that people from other teams coming asking, how can I join that team? Because it seems what they're doing is so much more exciting. And then you have to drop the wait, I need you there, because also what you are doing needs to move. So we always call you also need to move into the burger, to come back to that picture. So we need your skill there, because you are also on a roadmap to move into that. Yeah, so because the goal is very clear, everything will in the end be part of that nice. The burger will grow, but it's.
Yeah, you get to the point to diversity, because right now we mainly grow with the people that started many years in our communities, study, long life learning, but what I see is that in our company is that we are bringing people from other companies that started much later than us, so they don't have the problems, maybe have other problems, but making this push in diversity into our teams, leadership teams also, makes a different vision of what we can do. For example, people from Amazon or from Google, maybe they don't have the truth, but they have a different view of how to solve things. And this fail safe and fail fast and go to DevOps and how to work with our partners in a safe manner. I think it's
But then, if they're not on the bus, deal with it. I mean, everyone in this organization's got someone who's not performing. Why aren't you dealing with it? Because that's how you make space, right? So what's your bottom 20%? You know, how do you support them to get out of that bottom 20%? But if they're consistently there, maybe this isn't for you. Maybe there's something better for you that you'd be potentially more happy on. And telco is probably one of, don't forget, we all came from government organizations predominantly. Telco has got that problem massively. And unless it goes back to my initial point, how do you know the people that you've got are great? How can if you're presenting about what you've built in some event, how can you stand up on stage and say, I have the best team? And I'll say, why do you have the best team? And you can put the metrics up there to say, here's why. For that, the people in that team, you've got them forever. They will be loyal to you and they will build for you. And at 4 a.m. when you call them, they will pick the phone up.
Interesting. Well, I think we'll just stick on this question. We'll go to the poll in a couple of minutes, because we've only got a couple of minutes before we're out of time. But I think we should maybe pick up on this one. Laura, Alfredo mentioned diversity there. This is another good chance for rejigging our workforces a bit and have more representative workforces.
Yes, of course, because there's enormous excitement around cloud technology on an average compared to, say, really interesting reports from the UK government and Ofsted in particular, which would indicate that girls in particular, though I'm sure there are other demographics we need to address, start to feel a lack of confidence regarding technology and computing in schools at roughly age 11. And clearly, we all know the kind of different balance of the workforce across technology, highly skewed towards men, right across the board. And so we're grappling at the tail end in industry with a question that starts very, very young in the school system. And so how you can address that as well. Well, interesting work that we've done at BT with returner programs, Code First Girls, around the pivot of people from other sectors of industry, law. We've even had an opera singer, et cetera, come in and start to work on code and start to work on cloud, because really it's that behavioral mindset that you're looking for, the aptitude, the kind of curiosity, the actual technical brain, as it were, as opposed to actually the detailed knowledge in the past, given that the rate of technical change is so rapid. So I just bring that angle in as well. Yes, there is widespread excitement regarding cloud, but actually some groups feel less of a part of that. And we're talking about going back years, and so how do we address that as industry, right? How do we role model those different groups at the top, at leadership, and how do we create industry events that seek to, outline these incredibly exciting career paths to these different groups.
Thanks so much, Laura. And Anita, there are a lot of different groups. There's a lot of different people working on different aspects of this. I guess we always call for like collaboration between our industry bodies and what have you. Do you think that there's room for all these different projects? Do you think there's more demand for communication between the two, so we're not duplicating work and that we're clearly identifying which areas we're focusing on?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something I can really confirm, that the different organizations that we speak to each other. And first of all, we do have also in many cases shared board of director members. So that's one vehicle to avoid duplication, but also of course we speak to each other because typically we have the same, or we fish in the same pot of resources for the different works we are doing, and it needs of course to fit to each other. And therefore, that's something we will continue to do. So that's the only thing I can say.
Great. Thanks, Anita. Well, we are almost out of time, but before we wrap up, I do want to have a look at our poll and see what the current state of voting was. Here is the question, as a reminder, of what we were asking our viewers. What is the role of cloud native in successfully provisioning digital services? And the vote so far, well, there you go. That's pretty comprehensive, isn't it? 79% so far say that is absolutely essential to provide digital services. Franz, any surprises at all in that so far?
I'd like to talk to one of the not necessary people.
Yeah, who's the 11%?
I'd really like to understand the reasoning.
There's always one or two. Great, thanks. Right, well, that is the end of session 3. We will return at 15:50 for our final session today, which is building digital infrastructure from core to edge. In the meantime, we here in Windsor have a networking break. There's refreshments, there's pinball, there's coffee. And for the online audience, don't go away. We are about to start our next Extra Shot program with Charlotte in just a few moments, and she'll be picking up the conversation on cloud native with her guests. So don't miss that. Please stay with us. But for now, though, big thank you to all of our guests. Thank you.